The wind beat across the open plains with a restless, uneasy rhythm that morning, whispering through the tall grass and rattling the tin roof of Jacob Rourke's barn like an omen. Even the horses sensed something was wrong. They paced inside their corral, snorting and stamping at the ground as if they could feel the tension radiating off the man, standing at the fence. Jacob planted his boots deep into the dirt, hands gripping the sun-bleached wooden rail so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The early light washed the land in gold, but there was no warmth in it. Not for him, not today. What lay ahead was cold, colder than the wind, colder than the judgment he knew would soon fall on his shoulders. Everything he loved stretched out before him. The rolling grasslands, the lone cottonwood tree his father had planted when Jacob was born, the grazing fields where he'd learned to ride before he could even tie his own boots. His entire life was rooted here, and now the town wanted to rip it up by the roots. Behind him a horse whinnied softly. Then he heard boots crunching over dry soil, hurried but hesitant. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. "Jacob, don't do this." Clara's voice always carried warmth, sweetness even, but today it sounded thin and fragile, like someone trying to stop an avalanche with bare hands. She stepped closer until she was only a few feet behind him, wringing her hands dusted with flour from the morning's baking. Her apron was still tied around her waist, and her dark hair was half fallen from its braid, as if she had run all the way here. Jacob kept his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Clara, you shouldn't be here." "I had to come. People are talking. They're saying you're about to do something. Something reckless." She swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Tell me they're wrong." He slowed his breathing, but he didn't answer. That alone made Clara's chest tighten. She moved to his side, her gaze following his out onto the fields. "Jacob, this is your home. I know what it means to you. But blowing it up? Fighting the whole town? You'll lose everything." Jacob turned his head slightly, jaw set. "If I don't fight, I lose it anyway." A gust of wind pushed Clara's hair into her face. She brushed it back, blinking at him with pleading eyes. "You can't win like this." "They're breaking ground today at noon," Jacob muttered. "The mayor wants his development deal. A shopping center, a hotel, a highway expansion. He told everyone it'll save the town. But it's a lie." His fingers curled into fists. "He tricked my father into signing the land over when he was dying. Morphine in his veins, barely conscious." Clara's eyes softened in grief. She had adored Jacob's father, everyone had. A man who believed land wasn't something to own, but something to protect. "You should have told people sooner," Clara whispered. "You should have asked for help." "And who would have listened?" Jacob scoffed bitterly. "Half the town wants the money. The other half thinks the mayor walks on water. Anyone who stands against him becomes the villain." She stepped closer until her shoulder brushed his arm. "You're not a villain. But you will be. If you do what they're saying you'll do." He finally turned to her fully, and the look in his eyes felt like a punch to her chest. There was exhaustion there, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying the weight of a legacy too heavy for one man. "My father trusted me," he said. "On his last night he took my hand and said, 'Promise me, Jacob. Don't let them take this land.' Swore I wouldn't. And I'm not breaking that promise, not even if the whole town turns its back." Clara reached for him, her hand resting over his heart. "Then let me help you find another way." "You can't," he said quietly, removing her hand. "No one can." He walked toward the weather-worn shed behind the barn. Clara followed, dread curling in her stomach. When he pulled open the crooked door and stepped inside, the smell of dust and old wood drifted out. Clara pushed in after him and froze. There, under a heavy canvas tarp, lay the stack of dynamite. Jacob's father had kept it hidden for decades. Leftovers from an abandoned mining tunnel. Jacob pulled the tarp back with one quick motion. Clara gasped, her voice cracking. "Jacob, no. No, please. This is insane. You could die. Someone else could die." Jacob didn't respond. He crouched beside the crates, checking each bundle with steady, practiced hands. "Listen to me," Clara begged, grabbing his arm. "If you do this, there's no going back. They'll arrest you. You'll lose your ranch, your freedom, everything." Jacob looked up at her, and there was something hauntingly calm in his face. "I already lost everything when they stole my father's signature. This is all that's left." "That's not true." She clutched his shirt, desperate. "You have people who care about you. You have me. For a moment, Jacob's eyes flickered. Pain, longing, regret. But then he gently pried her fingers loose. I know, he whispered. But caring doesn't change what has to be done. He stood, lifting the first crate with both arms. Clara stumbled back, tears sliding down her cheeks. Jacob, please, she breathed. Don't do this. I'm begging you. He paused in the doorway, framed by the sunlight and the dust swirling around him. For a moment it looked as if he might turn back, but instead he gave her a look of quiet devastation. I'm sorry, Clara. Then he walked out, away from the shed, away from her, away from the last chance he had at choosing peace. Clara followed to the yard, but she couldn't make her legs go farther. She sank to her knees, helpless, watching the only man she'd ever loved carry explosives toward the field the mayor planned to destroy. The wind kicked up again, harsher this time, throwing dust into the air until it stung her eyes. Jacob didn't look back, and Clara's voice broke into a whisper that the wind quickly swallowed. God help you, Jacob Rourke, because no one else will. The dust was still settling when the first wave of townspeople arrived at the Rourke ranch. Some came on foot, others in dusty pickup trucks, and a few on horseback, all pulled in by the sudden thunderous blast that had shaken the valley like the earth itself had. Cracked open, smoke curled into the hot noon air, drifting over the plains in ghostly veils. Nobody spoke at first, they only stared at the enormous crater gouged into the land where the bulldozers were supposed to break ground. Then the shouting began. Mayor Harlan Briggs shoved through the crowd, his face an angry shade of purple, sweat running down his temples as his heavy boots thudded across the dirt. He pointed a trembling finger toward Jacob, who was standing alone near the blast site with his arms crossed, dust covering his hair and clothes. There, the mayor roared. There he is. Arrest him. He destroyed town property. He detonated explosives like some lawless outlaw. I want him in cuffs right now. Sheriff Cole Maddox did not move immediately. He stood a few yards behind the mayor, hands on his hips, jaw tight. His deputies exchanged uncertain glances. Jacob was not just another troublemaker. He was someone they'd grown up with, someone they respected. But the crater in the earth told a story that couldn't be ignored. Jacob didn't flinch at the mayor's screaming. He stood stern and still like an old oak rooted in a storm, eyes steady, expression unreadable. The townsfolk watched him with a mixture of fear and fury, whispering among themselves, what if someone had been over there? He could have killed us. He's gone too far this time. Then Clara burst through the crowd, breathless, face pale, apron still dusted with flour. Her hair, now loose from its braid, clung to her cheeks as her eyes searched desperately for Jacob. When she found him, her heart dropped. He looked untouched by remorse, untouched by fear, but she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weariness that came from making a decision that scorched his conscience as much as it scorched the earth. Jacob, she whispered, stepping toward him with trembling hands. What have you done? He tried to hold her gaze, but his expression flickered. Shame, regret, stubborn defiance all tangled together. What I had to. The mayor stomped forward again, practically foaming with rage. You think this is your land? It belongs to the town now. He jabbed a finger into Jacob's chest. You sold it. Jacob stepped back but did not look away. My father didn't sell you anything. You tricked him. Had him sign papers when he was delirious. The mayor scoffed. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have his medical files, Jacob replied evenly. And I have the truth. A ripple moved through the crowd. Uncertainty, doubt, unease. People exchanged glances. The mayor's face tightened. Sheriff Maddox cleared his throat. Jacob, regardless of what happened with the paperwork, you still detonated illegal explosives. His voice softened. I can't ignore that. Jacob nodded once. I know. Clara stepped between them, eyes shimmering with tears. Wait, Sheriff, you can't just, he isn't a criminal. He did this because no one listened to him. The mayor threw up his hands. Oh, listen to this. The baker thinks she knows the law now. Clara spun toward him, anger burning through her grief. No, I know what corruption looks like. And everyone knows you rushed this development deal through without a town vote. Gasps, murmurs, a few people nodded. The mayor opened his mouth to retort, but before he could, a shout came from near the crater. Sheriff, you'd better see this. Everyone turned. 2 workers were kneeling at the edge of the blast site, brushing away loose dirt with gloved hands. Something metallic glinted beneath the soil. a large rusted steel lid. The men wiped more dirt away, revealing what looked like the top of an old buried storage container. "What in the world?" Sheriff Maddox muttered as he stepped forward. Jacob walked with him, confusion etched across his face. "I didn't know anything was down there." The workers pried at the edges. The metal groaned. With one final wrench, the lid popped open, releasing a burst of stale air from decades underground. Inside lay stacks of documents, old papers, ties, envelopes sealed with wax, maps rolled tightly and yellowed with age. Dozens of them. An elderly rancher named Walter Briggs, not related to the mayor, stepped forward, leaning down for a better look. When he saw the top document, his mouth fell open. "Good Lord," he breathed. "That's the original Rourke land charter from the early settlers." He picked up another. These are the contracts showing ownership through generations. Your father must have hidden them." The mayor's face went ghost white. Clara's breath caught. Jacob. He wasn't just trying to protect the land. He was protecting the proof. Sheriff Maddox carefully lifted a brittle map, holding it to the light. "These documents, if they're authentic, they override any recent paperwork. This land belongs to you, Jacob, and legally it always has." A hush swept through the crowd. People shifted awkwardly, glancing at Jacob with guilt and new understanding. Even those who had shouted at him moments earlier now looked away, ashamed of their quick judgment. Jacob's chest tightened. He had not expected vindication. He had expected consequences. The mayor tried to recover, wiping sweat from his brow. "Those documents mean nothing. This is illegal tampering. Staged, probably. We can't—" The sheriff raised a hand, silencing him. "Harlan, enough. You pushed this land deal through too fast, too secretively. Now everything is going to be investigated." The mayor's lips trembled with rage, but he had no words left. Clara turned to Jacob, her voice soft with disbelief and relief. "Jacob, you didn't destroy your father's legacy. You uncovered it." He stared down at the documents, emotions warping inside him. Shock, grief, vindication, and the overwhelming weight of what he'd nearly lost. Sheriff Maddox stepped closer. "Jacob, you're coming with me for now. Not in cuffs. Just for questioning. Procedure, you understand." Jacob nodded. "I won't fight you, Cole." Clara reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "Jacob, I was so scared." Her voice wavered. "But I'm proud of you." He squeezed back. "I didn't want to drag you into this." "You didn't drag me," she whispered. "I walked in." The sheriff gestured toward his truck, but the hostility in the crowd was gone now. They weren't angry anymore, they were shaken, questioning everything, and some even offered Jacob small nods of respect as he passed. The mayor remained frozen in place, jaw clenched, knowing the ground beneath him had just shifted. As Jacob climbed into the sheriff's truck, he looked back at Clara. Her hand lingered near her heart, her eyes promising she wasn't going anywhere. And as the smoke slowly drifted off into the wide blue sky, the truth, buried for decades, finally saw the light. Not because the town wanted it, but because one rancher dared to dig it up.